Hi, I'm Chuck Dorsett for Weaver Leathercraft, and this is the Leather Element. If you've got a good question for us or a good idea for a leather element, drop it in the comment box below. All right, this week, more shop tricks. Now, if you've got a little more experience, I'm hoping there's something here that's going to help you out. But for those of us who are new to the craft, the tricks, the tips, the techniques, that's everything. Now, we want to take our project up another step. But the bigger point, let's make the time in our shop more enjoyable. And I hope this will help. So let's jump over here and get started. We've talked about the bell lamps before. These are inexpensive, add great light, easy to move around. But a big point here is that not all of us have a permanent workstation. So therefore, we can make two little T's. These are just simple end cuts from a 2x4. Therefore now, our lighting is movable, but at the same time, two lights, big point there. Particularly tooling. I'm going to be using my right hand to swivel, but as soon as I'm done there, I'm going to jump over to a bevel. Maybe doing that kind of quick, so I hate to try to move one light back and forth. So a light on each side, it's going to give me ample light. And if you're anything like me, I feel like I can never get enough light on my work surface. With these, that is no longer an issue. I get a lot of questions from folks who are new to the craft that say, I can only afford one tool in a certain set. What should I go with? Well, first off, understandable. You will accumulate the tools and the sizes that you use over time. But let's go with an oblong because we're going to use this on every strap that gets a buckle. First off, I would say go with a 1-inch. Now, these are going to vary in width and we can talk about that. But a 1-inch, first off, is going to cover a smaller strap. But if we have a larger strap, what we can do is step this out. So there we go. It's not a perfect punch, but when we bend that back, that looks fine, and a buckle prong will fit through that, no problem. Now, for those of us who are even a little bit newer and we don't yet have our oblongs, I definitely say get one, clean and fast. But in that situation, what we can do, and I'm going to do my best to do this well, is we can punch two holes in our strap, and we can simply cut between the two. But one point here, let's don't try to cut all the way to the hole, because what will happen is we'll cut past the hole. Now we've got an obvious cut there. So let's bring this down almost to the hole. Let's cut through. Let's do the same thing on the other side. Okay, with that, now let's jump back over to our first and just clip that end off. That keeps us from cutting too far through that hole. So there we go. Okay, well, it's not a great oblong, but it's certainly going to work and it looks pretty good. This one may seem like a no-brainer, but in our defense, we're concentrating on our project, and very likely we're thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead. My point here is this: let's cut away from our work. What I mean by that is right here I've got a panel, going to cut this out. I'm going to drop my straight edge on my work, square that to that edge. Now I'm going to make my cut. If my blade wavers a little bit, or I'm simply not paying attention and I cut out, well, there's no issue. I've not damaged my work at all. The opposite of that. Let's bring our straight edge to this side. Now, even if my blade wavers a little bit, I've ruined this panel. Now that I've got it marked out, it is useless. I got to move to a whole new piece of leather. Hopefully this will help those of us who are brand new. We don't yet have our tools, but also those of us with a little more experience. Because in my shop, I'm going to have a 1.5 inch, probably a 1, and maybe a 3/4 inch on my English point or round end. Now, if you're new, English point. That is simply a belt tip punch. But the more obscure sizes that I rarely use, say a 1 5/8 or maybe a 7/8, well, I'm not going to have that. So let's actually make a template that's going to create that size. But also, we can manipulate that a little bit. Let's start right here. So with this, let's start. We're going to go with a 1.5 inch wide strap, standard belt width. So let's take a piece of paper and let's fold that over. Now with this, I'm going to come in, my opinion, and you'll see what I'm talking about. I'm going to come in about 1 1/4 inch, 1.5 wide, 1 1/4 inch deep. With that, now I can take a French curve and I want to cut, no kidding, here, let's do that. Because if I cut from my bend out, yeah, we get that. It's happened a few times, but all right. So let's jump back over here. We want to cut away from our bend end. But if we do, now again, we can use a template. Let's just freehand this. There we go. Look at that. We've got a perfectly symmetrical template. So I can drop that in on my leather, scribe that, cut it, and I've got a beautiful belt tip. But I can do that with any size. Right there, that's a 1-inch wide strap. Now on this, I may come down 5/8 inch or maybe 3/4, which is my next point. Because we're cutting this ourselves, we can cut that tip any depth we want. If we want it very shallow, we can go that route, or very deep. In fact, I like that. That looks good. Now, one more point, because we typically get this question a lot. For our oblong punches, the rule of thumb, typically, 1-inch strap gets a 1-inch oblong, 1.5. But again, talking about obscure tools, there's a 2-inch. I can't honestly tell you that I have ever used this tool. But again, tools, always the best way to go. But if we don't have them yet, that's an easy alternative. I can't claim this tip as my own. In fact, most probably are not. But I used to buy a lot of leather from a saddle company. They had 2 full-time toolers. No kidding. Their job, 8 hours a day, was to hand tool leather. They were pretty good. But this is one of the tricks they showed me. They tend to wrap their most commonly used tools in gauze, or maybe here just some rag material, some cotton rag material. First thing it's going to do, we don't need a lot of grip here, but we do need a little bit. On the standard tool, the knurling offers a little bit of grip, but it's not really enough to notice or to be a really big help. Some padding will certainly help, but the bigger point is now I've got a softer surface to hold on to. So when I've got a bunch of camo to drop in, or maybe say a lot of backgrounding or beveling, that's going to give my hand just a little bit of help. So therefore, I can work around long distances without really tearing up my hand or causing the tips of my fingers to get sore. A sewing pony is an absolute necessity in a leather shop. In fact, this is going to make hand sewing very easy, but there are a couple of points. Love our pony, it's a good pony, but it doesn't come with leather on the throat here. So I'm going to drop in a lightweight, veg, chrome, doesn't matter, but I'm going to drop that in with a contact cement, so therefore when I clamp this down, it's not going to ding my project. Secondly, if you're new to leather, these are actually made to where we can sit on the base here. We can turn the clamp towards us. That's going to put our workspace right in front of us. Very sturdy, very stable workspace. Here's the problem. Works great for a wallet. It's not going to work for a pair of saddlebags. We'll talk about that in just a second. But also, I tend to stand up when I sew. I have better vision, more upper body strength. But not everyone is like that. So if you use a C-clamp, we can clamp this just about anywhere on our work table. Higher, lower, sideways, make it comfortable. If we do that, we can put our workspace right in front of us. Therefore, our arms are not fatigued. We can sew further and have a better time with it. One last point, and this one makes me crazy. This is a natural hook for a thread. When we're hand sewing, my thread is going to hook on this every time. So just take a piece of tape, run that across there. That's going to save a lot of frustration. Trust me on that one. But also, I mentioned saddlebags, a much larger project, and I hate to bring this on camera. Obviously used in love, but this is my homemade sewing pony. But I've made this because now I've got a very deep throat. I can go deep on a saddlebag or a briefcase. Simply 2 2x4s, 2 carriage bolts, and again I can clamp this in a lot of different configurations on my work table, thus making it easier on our hands, which is the point. Well, I hope those are going to help. Hope that's going to take your project up another level. But again, the bigger point, I hope this is going to help make that time in your shop a little bit more enjoyable. Thanks for taking time to watch The Leather Element. Good luck with your projects.